Welcome to the Midsters Podcast, your podcast for inspiration on being bold and saying yes to making the most of your midlife.
I like this conversation. We're going to talk about saving versus
savoring.
savoring. I talk to a lot of people same age as I am going into this stage of life where they're retiring and they've saved for it. What are they going to do with it? I'm talking about money at the moment, but as we both know, saving, you can have an emotional savings account, a joy savings account, financial savings account, memory saving account. We can go on and on, right? But the saving, the financial part of it, I'm interested to see what you think. I think that saving assumes that we know the future. I think savoring realizes maybe we don't. And so I look at it that way as well. Like, we want enough for later, but what's later, none of us really know.
What's it going to be like?
We're assuming that the future's going to cooperate.
Yeah.
And it might not. What's your take on it?
I think there's a balance, right, to
Yep.
be had in figuring out, at least with respect to material resources, and we could talk more about non-material resources. With material resources, like what's the appropriate balance? And, you know, a lot of people who have the means to do so will consult with a financial advisor. Financial advisors, in my experience, and maybe there are some out there that are not in this ilk, but in my experience, they always tell you to save. Save, 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 save. Save for your retirement, save for your old age, save for your kids go to college, save for this, save for that. There is something to that, but you give up something in the moment when you save too much. And I think the trick is to find the balance. I've told you this story. What really set me thinking about this was when my kids were younger. My husband and I had been married at that point about 10 years, so we were in our 40s. And we would regularly go, our vacation in the summer would always be to go to the beach. We rent a house in Rehoboth Beach.
Yep.
Inexpensive vacation. It was nice. It was good family time. But at one point, my husband said to me, God, we never do anything different. It's so boring. And I was like, well, it's boring because it's cheap. I mean, this is what he's like, yeah, but like we always go to the beach. And kind of a light bulb went off for me. Like, we have a limited amount of time with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the experience that I want them to have? Now, don't get me wrong. There's something nice about the regularity of routine
Yeah.
and sort of building that into your life. But can't we do that and sometimes do something a little more, give them a different kind of experience, give our family a different kind of experience, even though that meant spending more money? And so I said to him, I mean, we can go anywhere you want to go, but we have to spend money to do it.
Yeah.
And we decided we would spend money to do it. And so we ratcheted down our savings and ratcheted up our activity level. And I do not regret that.
That's so good. So that was your light bulb moment.
That was my light bulb moment.
I think we all have them. And I think saving's important. I don't want my kids to have to worry about me financially later in life. But I also think that there is a balance as well. And sometimes it is a light bulb moment. I think that people sometimes are faced with a crisis and they realize, okay, I got to live now.
Yep.
Right. Mine wasn't quite like that, but it was similar. There was, and I talk about this. I'm sorry, I'm talking about it again, but I had a child that was ill. But we had a conversation with a psychiatrist that said, you need to create memories now. We did travel, and we had gone to Hong Kong, several places, take Caymans and so forth, and that was all fun. But we were actually advised to find and do something, even if it costs us, figure out a way to create memories now. You could always do it at home, but in the vacation sense or in a sense that would take us to a place where these memories would not have anything else except goodness, we decided, and we really couldn't afford it. We ended up affording it. I mean, it comes somewhere. You start budgeting and making things, but we ended up buying a second house. And it was not that everybody has to do that by any means, but that was a big financial thing that we can have this money at the end, but we we will benefit from it as a family unit and
Mhm.
developing having memories and enjoyment together by taking the risks we might not have it later, but right now we have to live in the moment. And so we rented a place for about a year. We loved it. Something came up as a bank sale. We're like, okay, we are going to do this. And it's been in our home now for 13 years, in our family, I should say, for 13 years. We all own it. It's a family place, but that was a really smart decision, I think,
Mhm.
because memories were made by using that money then, memories that we would never have.
Mhm. And
Kinda like what you're saying about your vacations.
yeah, and in the moment, you enjoy every day that you're out at that house. I know, and you
Yeah.
know that I enjoy going
Yes,
out to that
yes.
house. Yeah,
But we were scared about doing it,
yeah.
jumping in and spending that money that could compound over years.
It's I think part of what happens, and we just actually wrapped up earlier today, recorded episodes that y'all can listen to about psychological nakedness and self-awareness. A piece of that relates to this conversation. I think the first thing you really need to do before you decide how much money you're going to save and what you're going to spend is really grapple with what your predetermined notions are about life. Because as you said, there's no guarantee,
Right.
right? My husband and I, interestingly, came at it initially from two very different places. And we have had a lot of conversations over the course of our life that have led to the choices that we have made about how to spend and how to save.
Mhm.
My father, as you know, died very young. He was 58. My mother was alone for a long time. When my father died, my mother had not been in the workforce. She had to go back into the workforce, but she was already 50, so she didn't have a lot of work life to
Right.
save for. She had to make do with what she had for a long time.
Yeah.
On the other hand, my father died at 58. He didn't get to do a lot of
Yeah.
things that I want to do in my life. Flip side of that is Dave's parents. His father was in his mid 80s when he died. His mother was in her late 80s when she died, and she had a form of dementia, so she was in care the last number of years of her life. So, he was looking at it more from life will be long, life may be debilitating at the end, we need to save for that eventuality.
Mhm.
I was more inclined to life could be very short,
Right.
and if I judge wrong, right? My mom made do with very little for a long time, so there will be a way, there will be a path. So I was more predisposed to spend. That's important because in a marital relationship, you have to grapple with that. You could be
Yeah.
coming from two very different places
Mhm.
about financial
It's
matters,
true.
and you have to resolve that before you can make life decisions? And then fast forward later in our life as we were getting closer to retirement, we had conversation with the financial analyst. My husband is much more concerned with leaving money to the kids when we die than I am. And my children know that I love them, but I would rather spend the money now and do things with them and build memories
Right.
than leave them a chunk of money later.
Yeah.
So again, we had to kind of come to a sort of common understanding of what that was going to mean. So it takes work.
It
Actually, you would
does.
think it would be easy to just decide I'm going to be a saver, or I'm going to be a spender, but you have to make that decision for a family,
Yeah.
and that's complicated.
I think when we think about money and saving, in our minds, the first thing is, putting the money away when we're younger and continue is money grows.
Money grows.
What we don't think enough about, life shrinks,
Mm. Excellent thought.
right? Life shrinks. And I think we have to think about that in a way. M- my marital relationship and our thoughts, we come from it a little bit differently too. I do want to make sure my children have or grandchildren. If I could help with them in the future, I would want to do that. It's more important for my husband to leave a financial generational wealth. He thinks about that actually more than I do. But I think where we have really come together is setting that aside. One common theme is we want to see our children enjoy
Mhm.
experiences like you talked about and the money that that could provide. So spending it now on family vacations, even though they're older, I just booked a dude ranch for us up in Montana. We're gonna do women's group too, but I booked one for our family for our 6. I have one getting married as well, and, whatever is needed for that wedding, it if I can do it, I'm doing it, because the fact is I want to see that money that I could provide add to their wedding, to their happiness, to more people that could attend that they would want to, whatever it takes, right? Families are all coming together, both families to do what they can. And I could leave it in the bank and let it grow, but why not enjoy it now? So I think there's a lot of ways to enjoy money now that you might not ever see.
Yep. I totally agree. And there is no substitute for having shared family time. That's an investment of a different kind. Your
Yeah.
money can grow, but I would rather leave something in my kids that they will have long after I'm gone.
Mhm.
And it won't be financial. It'll be a feeling of having been truly loved and have been part of something that was a loving unit.
Right.
And hopefully they'll pass that on to their children and it'll have rebounding doubling benefits in the future. So it's just a different kind of investment.
Yeah, I don't think my kids in 20 or 30 years are gonna say talk about how I saved. I think what they're gonna talk about is the memories
Right.
that they have that, was provided to them, right?
But, just to be clear, in no way am I saying throw caution to the winds.
Right, of
Right.
course.
We've always been savers. It's just a question of hitting the balance. And we could probably sometimes I look at the bank account and think, whoa, what if we had never spent money on X or we had
Mhm.
never done Y? How much would we have?
Yeah,
But money is not an end of itself. It's
right.
meant to be I mean, it's a method of transaction. So
Yeah,
what are you transacting it for?
right,
That's kind of how I look at it.
right. The future can't be a storage bin,
Right.
right? It can't be a storage bin.
Which
Don't store everything.
which leads to a point that you had made earlier when we were talking before this podcast, that balance between saving and savoring isn't always a financial calculation.
Right, no, I mean, it's just one, and people come from different economic lives, right? Some people, can save a whole lot, and some people can just save a little bit, but in your entire life, there's all kinds of ways to save or to savor, and I love my friends, and my mom does this, who uses her sterling silver every day.
Mm.
She is savoring that, and they are savoring that, and they're what people will bring out as good china, they use every day. They're not saving it for the future that might not ever come or that once a year. They're savoring the things that they enjoy that mean something to them every single day. It makes me smile. Like, I love that.
I love that too, and I keep saying I'm going to do that, and I haven't, and there's a psychological hurdle there to get over, which is if I use it, I could break it, and then I won't have it.
Ah,
But what's the having for if it's not about enjoying and savoring?
right.
I mean, some
There's replacements.com, I think.
yeah, there is, but, and there's also a
I
thought
use my
there.
china every day.
Do you?
Yes,
Oh
that
my
brown china that you see, that was given to us by a godfather that had passed on, my kid's godfather, and I was like, "You know what? He is so important in his life, it shrank." So he didn't have it. He loved this china, and he didn't use it enough, and it's something that he wanted me to have, and I use it, and I think about him on a daily basis because I use it. Yeah,
oh, that's
I savor
lovely.
that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's lovely. I'm just always so afraid of, like, losing things or breaking things, and really it's crazy because I have a lot of china. I have my china, my mother-in-law's china, my mother-in-law's mother-in-law's china. Got lots
You
of
got lots
china.
of
I
china.
got lots of china, and yet I don't use it. So I'm gonna make a determination right here that I'm gonna start using that china. And the interesting thing is, like, sometimes we save things like that,
Yeah.
heirloom things,
Mhm.
to pass on, and then our families don't even want them.
I know.
My husband and I went through this big thing, and I think I may have talked about this before on the podcast. Um, when his mom sold her house, she was a saver. She saved all kinds of things, and everything had value. Most of it was stuff that was passed down to her through her family.
Mhm.
So the fact that it had this aura of family thing made it very valuable to her emotionally. And we got it all and we had to sort through it all. And I was like, I will not do this to my children. So there's another place where I'm more likely to dispense with things, right? And not save them because I don't want to burden my children with figuring out what to do with crap that they have no connection with.
Yeah.
And one of the big things was there were several portraits, family portraits, and when we inherited them, I said to my husband, "Well, who is that person? I don't know." "Well, who is that person?" "I don't know." I was like, "Look, we are not hanging dead ancestors who we can't name on our walls, and nor are we storing those for our kids to deal with.
Right.
That's unfair."
Yeah.
And so we disposed of those, and the money that we got from them, we used to do a family trip.
Mhm.
So, it's balancing these things,
It
right?
is. This morning I got up, I actually did a little video clip, but, because I knew we were gonna talk about this today, even though it wasn't an unusual event for me, I got up this morning, I made myself some coffee, I put on my fireplace, and I sat there and started thinking, "Okay, I gotta get ready here in a little bit, but I savor the moment." I try to do that, it's kind of my reset in the morning, or my set, I should say. And it dawned on me that I have friends, and my mother was like this too, even though she used her silver. She didn't want to use the gas all the time in the gas fireplace. But she got better and better at it as she got older. Like it costs money to do the gas. Well, you know what? I'm gonna say I have a gas fireplace. I'm gonna savor this. I'm gonna turn on that gas every morning this winter. I am gonna sit here and I'm not just gonna have random coffee. I'm gonna savor my coffee. I love coffee. One of my favorite coffees I was introduced to on a sailing trip. There's a gentleman up in Maine that roasts coffee beans and grinds them, and I have them sent every month. So I am not gonna save that coffee for company or for special times. I'm gonna savor it. So there are all kinds of things in life that we enjoy that we put off or we think it's fancy or we're only gonna tap into it, for special moments, but I think we can get a lot out of life and enjoy our life in a much fuller way by just stopping and savoring even the smaller things that we might not think we're deserving of for some reason.
Well, it's funny you say that, and coffee is what you refer to because, I only drink cold brew. I love cold brew coffee. I could drink regular coffee. I don't like it as much. I like cold brew. Cold brew takes a lot of coffee to produce a cup,
I
right?
found that out
Yes.
recently from you.
Yeah, it's like 6 scoops to the little container to make my morning coffee, which
Mhm.
is a lot of coffee for one person. And, I could say, well, I should be a little more judicious and serve my coffee out a little more carefully because coffee is expensive, especially right now. But the the joy that I get from my morning cup of cold brew is worth it. It's just worth it.
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off, and that's where I've landed. You said something earlier though that I do wanna kind of speak about a little bit because it really resonated with me. Before we started, you said something about not saving your love.
Oh, yeah.
And, so I have a little story.
Okay.
As I said, my dad died at 58.
Yeah.
Shortly before my dad died, like 10 days before he died, I was in school in Charlottesville at UVA, and my dad, actually was doing business with a company outside of Charlottesville, and he had to go down for a meeting. So he called and he said, "Let's go out to dinner. I'm gonna be in town." That would prove to be the last time I ever saw him, but of course I didn't know then
Mm.
that that would be the case. But for some reason, when we went out to dinner that night, and let me just back up and say, I think you know this, our listeners might not know this. My dad was always my biggest advocate. Um, there were, for a lot of reasons, my mother was not comfortable with my going away to college. My dad was the supporting mechanism behind that. So when we went out that night to dinner, I just felt like it was the right time to thank him for that. And so I said, "Thank you for always being my cheerleader. Thank you for letting me come to school here. Thank you for overriding mom's objections.
Mhm.
You have made me happy and I appreciate it." And later, a week later, when he passed away, I was so glad that I had said something because we often wait too long to express our love and appreciation to people for the things they give us, not the physical things,
No.
but the important
Yeah.
things.
Um, Saving things, physical things, tangible things, but also emotional things that come from vulnerability for the right moment, I have realized is wrong. There are some things you might wait on. But in general, if it's in your head, it's the right moment. I
Mhm.
believe we've talked about intuition. I think it's really important, and when we think about saving versus savoring, I think also we don't realize an outcome that could be savored if we're vulnerable enough to put ourselves out there and not save something until it's more comfortable to do or to say. Um, I have several examples, but I will say what what I think about most, is those moments of affection that
Mhm.
you can give. Sometimes it seems awkward. I tell you I love you. I know a lot of people that don't tell friends that they love them. It's saved for something else, for other people, for family, for their romantic partner. Maybe they don't understand what love is. I think that we're not affectionate enough. We save it for certain people, and there are a lot of people in our lives that we cross on a daily basis that we can leave words of affection. And compliments is another one.
Compliments are a great one, yes.
I mean, that not only allows us to savor in a feeling or an experience of giving and gratitude of our words or how we feel, but I promise you, those people go on with their life savoring that moment that you told them that you love them. Or that kind gesture that you did. I don't know why we don't think about savoring, because I think of savoring also, it's savoring, it's enjoying something, but it also evokes an emotion in us
Mhm.
that's so fulfilling and has so much gratitude, I feel. I have gratitude when I get to feel something, and it really is just being vulnerable and doing it and not saving those things. It's your emotional bank,
It's your emotional bag. I love that.
right?
Another similar area where we sometimes save at the expense of savoring is time.
Ah,
You
the
know
most important currency, Leslie Ann.
Yeah. I'm gonna save time by taking this shortcut. I'm gonna save time by speeding up this process. Instead of savoring the moment that you're in and experiencing what you're experiencing, right?
Yep.
Or multitasking, which we tend to sometimes and sometimes it is a virtue to be able to
Mhm.
multitask. But when you're multitasking, you're saving time, but you're giving up savoring of the tasks that you're doing and the benefit, you're losing the benefit
Yeah,
of doing those tasks.
right.
Sometimes it's worth slowing down time
Mhm.
in order to savor the moment.
Yeah. I love when people say it's a phrase that's used a lot, but it's so true. Don't think so much about the destination. Think about the journey it took to get there. All those little things, and that's what you're talking
Mhm,
about. It's
exactly.
exactly what you're talking about, and I think that we live in a very hurried life. I also think that we live in a life and we feel like we're invincible, that it's infinite, um, and it's not.
In a funny practical sense,
Yeah.
I'm planning this trip to Portugal with the kids
Yes.
because my daughter-in-law she did a short film, folks, and it won the LA 48-hour film contest, and now it's gonna be showed in, Lisbon, so we're all going to support her. We're gonna go to Porto as part of that trip, and so Lindsay, my daughter, and Natasha, my daughter-in-law, called, and they were like, "To get from Lisbon to Porto, should we fly or take the train?" The flight's faster, it's more expensive. The train's slower, but it's less expensive. And to me, like, part of that calculus isn't just that the train's slower, but the train, right, allows us to savor the
See
time together
and see.
and to see the countryside that we're going through.
Yeah.
Even in a passive way to experience more of the country.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm all in for the train. That's one of those decisions that you can make that,
Yeah.
like, saving time isn't always the right thing.
That's true. I love taking trains overseas, like in Scotland.
It's so cool. Yeah.
'Cause you do see all the landscape, you take it in, you savor it,
Mhm.
and what you've talked about is really that calculation of saving and savoring. You're saving time, you can save money, all that stuff that you chose to savor, which I think is important. We grow up in a mindset where we think a little bit of scarcity in time, but we think it's like we have lots of it, but we don't. And I think that we grow up fearing that we're not going to have enough at
Mhm.
the end of the day. Um, I think that we fear conflict. And so savoring is usually very pleasant, but you can also sit and savor just the smells or the not physical smells. I mean more like the outcomes of things. Does that make sense? That might be good or bad. So savoring to me, it's almost like your sugars and your spices or your hot or your salty or your sweet or whatever. When you're savoring life, it's not always pleasant. We think of it as pleasant, right?
No,
But I
that's a
think
good
you
point.
have to sit and you have to savor all of it. And so the uncomfortable things we save to later, maybe hoping it'll never come or things will change before it gets to that point. But then there's times that you probably should have bit the bullet,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
saved it for another day.
Well, I'll tell you, so there's an overlap between the financial and the metaphysical right there,
Yeah.
because one thing I've done, and I have to admit, it made my daughter a little uncomfortable, but, um, I'm gonna die someday. I
Yeah.
am gonna leave some things behind, not necessarily financial things, but some physical things, jewelry,
Mhm.
and I sat down with her and went through my jewelry box and said, "These are the things that will go to you. These are the things that will go to your brother." She was like, "I don't really wanna discuss that." But there's something about experiencing that process with her
Mhm.
where, I'm signaling my love for both of them in saying, this is how I want things to look. And I am saving them the discord of
Mhm.
having to sort it out for themselves. They can simply know that mom has already made that decision. And then someday they will receive what they receive.
Yeah.
So I'm not saving the pain of making that choice for them.
Yeah.
I am savoring the fact that I am giving them a gift. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is there anything that you are saving now for some time later that you could actually savor?
Ooh, good
No. I mean,
question.
I gotta think about that for myself as well for a minute, but I'm just thinking, in my life right now, what am I saving that I should be savoring?
I have to say that since I retired, I've been leaning hard into the
The
savoring.
travel.
We've been traveling hard, there is very little that I am leaving for later,
Yeah.
if anything, because I just kind of feel like I want to enjoy these moments and I don't know how long it'll last.
Mhm. I would think for me, is there anything that I am saving for later that I could be doing now? There are some small things. We want to eventually have some presence where our kids are. One is in Texas. So that is something that we hope to do. But when I say that out loud, the why behind that is we want to spend more time. So, do we really need that? No. What I need to do is spend more time with my kids now. Even though I see them every couple of months, I actually could savor what I think I might get from having a place there and being more permanent. I could probably do it now. Okay, thank you. That was really good thing for me to work through
Well,
on the podcast.
no, it's interesting to say that because we don't own any house right now.
Right.
And as you know, we're talking about spending more time in California last year, and that has raised a whole lot of questions about what that looks like, right?
Mhm.
And do we invest in something and then have a little nest egg in California, which maybe someday would go to the kids, or do we just spend the money and rent a place and or maybe an Airbnb or however we're going to do it? That's something that we have to try to balance out, and it is
Yeah.
something we'll continue to talk about. These are not always easy choices. It's not
No.
like you just choose one or the other,
Right.
right? Door A or
Right.
door B. You really do have to think about and balance things, and that
Mhm.
takes effort, but it's an effort worth making.
This is probably for another podcast, but sitting here thinking about it, about saving and savoring, and I know I talk about health stuff a lot of times, but sometimes you're in relationships and you have partners that might not have the same amount of time, right? Age difference, health differences, all of that. And so savoring the moments now are important. And sometimes what you want to do in life might not even be the same or align. So making sure that each of you are able to savor what's important to you
while you can do it
while
together.
you can do it together.
Yeah.
I think that that is really important. And having that discussion because our trajectories in life are all so different from each other and waiting to do things. Like I hear the phrase all the time, "Oh, when I retire, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D." You might not retire. You might retire to a place you don't want to retire, right?
Right.
Not just from your job. So anything that you can fit in now and savor and enjoy that, I don't think I'd wait.
It's interesting you say that because one thing I do, and now that we're talking about this, we get all kinds of ideas when we talk to each other. Um, there is an artist in London that I love. I just love his work. It's expensive. Now you and Robert have fantastic artistic taste and have lovely pieces of art.
Thank
I
you.
don't. That's just not something I've ever
Right.
invested in. But I'm beginning to wonder why. Why am I not investing in a piece of art that I love? Now, it would be expensive, so it would be giving up money, but it would bring me joy in the moment, and I would see it every day, and I would savor having it in my presence.
Do it.
So I should just do it.
You should. Something that brings joy daily, done.
Yeah, I mean, that's a different kind of savoring. That's savoring something over a period of
Right.
time.
Yeah.
That's a commitment to savoring.
Well, and you know the interesting thing, and I know you, so I can see you drawn to art. Some people would think, "Oh, that's frivolous. Why would you spend money?" Art can evoke thoughts, emotions. It brings you joy.
Mhm.
And savoring in that, that's what art's about. That's what the arts are about. It's
And
not
creating an environment around you, curating your home
Mhm.
so that it's something you want to be in.
Yeah.
Someday, maybe I will be more homebound, right? Why wouldn't I want this lovely thing in my home that brings me happiness?
I think you need to go to London.
I think I'm going to have to do it. Not that I wasn't going to go anyway. As we're having this conversation, perhaps we should ask Elizabeth if she has any thoughts about saving and savoring.
Okay, you have to bear with me a little bit on this one, because you really had me thinking, and it actually runs parallel to something that I'm currently reading. So my husband and I, we decided to start our own little book club, just the two of us. We read a couple chapters, and then we take the time to talk about what we thought about those chapters in the book. And
I love
honestly,
that.
it's been so good for us because we're always so busy with the kids. And so, ironically, the first book that we decided to read was one that was suggested to him or this group that he's a part of. And it's called 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals by
Ah.
Oliver Berkman. And the 4,000 weeks being the premise that we have 4,000 weeks in our lifetime. And so it really kind of reframes time as something that's deeply finite and like, what are you doing with your time? And so, my question to you is how does that kind of change the way we think about saving for the future versus savoring what's right in front of us?
That's a great question. And actually, it is something I've thought a lot about recently, like recently in the last 5 years. Time is finite, right? And as I said earlier, my father died young. So that naturally gives me an inclination to want to savor more. Um, I've said this before in this podcast, but life is a gift. And I'm not going to squander that gift by putting aside things that will enrich my life and maybe give me a sense of my purpose. Travel, travel is an incredible thing. When you travel, you open so many doors and you have just so many insights that you don't have if you limit your life. So if I have to spend money now to travel as much as I can while I can, in awareness that not only is life finite, health is finite, right? You know, there comes a point where my health is going to be, you know, less robust than it is now, even if I'm still alive. So I want to lean into that to embrace that by doing as much as I can now. And that means I'm not gonna save money, I'm gonna go do things that have experiences that will enrich my soul.
I again think that time is probably the most important currency. Money is important because it'll allow us to live more comfortable later in life or hopefully, but how are you living it now? I think that's the guarantee. And so I feel like savoring the moments, the time, the and you think about time and it seems so long when you're a kid, like
Mm.
for the Christmases. But then as you get older, you really realize how finite it is because there's people around you that pass away or they get sick and they can't do it in the same way. I think it I think you have to get a point in life or have a crisis in life. Sometimes it's a crisis like, okay, I'm not going to live forever. I'm going to savor life now. Um and that's unfortunate if that's what takes you there, but I think if we can all focus on the fact that time is the most important currency and a moment is time and is a currency, and to optimize every moment. I think life is just much more richer, in general. Being the prosecutor, I mean, she gets to the point uh, like a lightning flash, a bolt. And I am like this long storm that you're watching to come in, and lightning's gonna come someday. That's how I feel, how we get to an answer
Here's
so
the trade-off.
differently.
But
I'm like
here's the trade-off to that, because I'm actually very aware of this too, but in a different way. Because I get to the answer quickly, I take a very direct route. You're more likely to bring in different unusual thoughts, which I think are very
it's
insightful.
nice of you to
No, no,
say.
I'm serious that I don't see because I am like as the crow flies, go from here to there. You take a more meandering route, but you bring so much more with you when you do
You're
that.
very nice to say
So,
that. I'm thinking you're probably I'm thinking you and Elizabeth are like, "Okay, it's coming, it's coming, it's
no,
coming."
no, no.
Like, the storm's slowly coming in. Where's that bolt of lightning? You laid it out in 2 seconds.
I think that's why our conversations are good though, is that we have different strengths. But don't undervalue
Okay,
your
thank
strength.
you for saying
I
that.
think that's the strength. I
We're
do.
so different that way. I'm like, "Why can't I just get to it like that?"
Dave gets mad at me sometimes because he's like, "You're too damn definite." And I'm like, "But that's how I see it, you know?" But I miss things by being that
Oh,
way.
no. There's probably strength in both.
There are. I've also been thinking about how obsessed we are with efficiency, right? Doing things faster, getting through this list, but oftentimes it just means filling our lives with more obligations. Do you think efficiency has become a way of avoiding the discomfort of slowing down?
The interesting thing in that question is I think we fail to stop and ask ourselves, what are we being efficient for? When we build up this bank of time that we've saved by being efficient, what exactly is it that we expect to do with it? If it is take on more tasks, then that's kind of crazy. Um, but then again, if it's to waste time, that feels guilty, right? It's
Yeah.
a guilty pleasure to waste time. So I think the problem with being efficient is that we aren't really thinking through the process, what's on the other end.
I think of a quote that my mother used all the time, and it's very well known, and probably I was really young when because I was somebody that wanted to get things done, and I would get things done, um, pretty efficiently. But my mother, I must have been, like, literally younger than 10, and she would just put her hands on me and was like, "Stop and smell the roses."
Hmm.
My mother used to say that, and I think about that a lot. She still says it, and she does stop and smell the roses, and she lives life, and even though something may be a more efficient way to get something done, she has always kinda looked at, like, what are you skipping over? And so I try to think about that. I'm not as good about it as she is, but I tell myself, "Okay, stop and smell the roses."
Well, I think we have explored that topic, and this was a great conversation.
It was. People can find us on AmericanMinsters.com. The other thing, please go to YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. I don't say that enough, but do it.